Well, some Studebakers in Washington State knew that this cabin was going to be torn down. It was Britton Studebaker's homestead in Washington. They said to my dad, "We think that you could have this cabin if you would come and tear it down." So he went out, marked every single log, and took the cabin down, got a rail car, loaded the cabin on, and then he still had space. So in order to pay for the shipping, he bought some Washington pine
Two by fours.
2x4s. And he loaded the rail car
Full of 2x4s. And in the meantime, there was a strike in Canada, and the price of 2x4s tripled. And by the time it got to Tipp City and all unloaded, he had tripled his price in 2x4s and paid for the trip. So it was Emmert always got it right.
So when he came home then, of course, it had to be reassembled. So every log was marked. Then all the high school boys that my dad could hire, who were knowledgeable and hardworking, assembled this cabin.
Under the supervision of a high school math teacher,
Claire
Berkebile, who ran the show and knew the boys that would do the job, and so it's quite a story of how they put it together. And
so now throughout the community, you'll meet people who say, "Oh, I helped put that cabin up." So my dad was always about people learning things as well as giving them a job. He wanted it to be a learning experience for them, and so many of them learned under Claire Berkebile's tutelage something about erecting things.
And it was Emmert was a good idea person and had a great idea, and he came upon this picture of the original Studebaker brothers blacksmith shop. And that's a whole interesting story. If you take a picture of that and then you see the cabin next to it, which we call the Peter cabin, he duplicated that Peter cabin and the blacksmith shop, so that it was a duplication of the Clement Studebaker family brothers. And from that blacksmith shop, Emmert started a whole cadre of people doing blacksmithing in Miami County. And eventually it arose to about a couple hundred people, and then it went into Quad States and all the states around, and all of it started with Emmert's idea of building a blacksmith shop.
So now those blacksmiths have their own blacksmithing facility up at the Troy County Fairgrounds in Troy, Ohio. And the blacksmith shop here is just used now and then, but it still has the blacksmiths who come and make things now and then. But a lot of people learned a hobby and satisfaction and found friendships through that blacksmithing thing. They would bring in international blacksmiths. So when I'm traveling throughout the world and I go into somebody's blacksmith shop at a little restored village, generally they know about Emmert Studebaker and about the blacksmithing.
Excellent. You have a picture you want to show me there?
This is John Studebaker's family from Zion, Illinois, and he was a descendant of Britton Studebaker, who moved out to Washington and erected this log cabin, the first log cabin at the village. So they always came and stayed in this cabin and reminisced about their ancestor. I suppose it wasn't.
He was a grandson.
He was a grandson because homesteading there was like in the 1900s. It was more recent. So that's kind of the Britton cabin story.
Thank you both.
You're very welcome.